Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have a lot of presentation and material to get through, so we're starting right on time. I do understand that there were some long lines out at the buses this morning, so we'll probably have people just filter in as we go through. My name is Scott Miller. I'm the Senior Director for the Worldwide Onboarding Center here at Microsoft, and I got George Muslim that's also going to be presenting with me to run through some demos and tools that we use in the Onboarding Center. Before we get started, one thing I'll ask is that we hold questions to the end, and because this is being recorded, I'll ask that you come use the microphones. I think we have 2 on this side and then 2 on the side over there, so just step up to the mic, and we'll save 15 minutes at the end to take any of the questions that you have. Just a quick bio for me. I've been deploying Microsoft technology for the last 25 years, both as a customer and system integrator, and then also for the last 15 years here at Microsoft. I worked with Microsoft Consulting Services the last 13 years, and then the last couple I've been with the Office 365 Business Group deploying Office 365. And then I'll have George introduce yourself when you do the demos. Is that fine?
Yep.
Okay. One of the big important factors here as we start off and as we built this onboarding center was we were really trying to change the game and how we did deployments. As Satya said yesterday, the purpose of Ignite is to really drive innovation and transformation. And I really feel like the Onboarding Center has done that this year. And again, this is new since September of 2014. But not only is it driving innovation and transformation for you all, the customers and the partners that we work with, but also inside Microsoft. Again, this is different from an engineering perspective than anything that we've done before, because we've not only changed the way that the product works from a deployment perspective, but we've added people in the mix to help bridge of what the product does and doesn't do in working with you all, the customers. So I'm going to find my clicker here. All right. Before we get started, one thing as we went into this, I'll call it experiment, and headed out and started off with this onboarding center, we kind of wondered, what is it going to take to make this successful? 5,000 customers later, from the start of September to now, we've learned a lot, and we've found out, in fact, this is a very successful way to work with customers and partners to onboard to Office 365. But one of the first customers we had really punctuated this to me, that this is something that can really help. We started working with this one customer. We had called them, and we found out that they had actually purchased 2 years prior and had done nothing from a deployment perspective. As we talked to this customer, they said, we ran into some problems early on. We couldn't find the answers. We didn't know how to do it, so we just waited. And then they bought a few more licenses. They couldn't figure it out, and they waited. When we called them, we started walking them through the process. We gave them the guidance and assistance. We ran some of the tools that you'll see in this presentation, helped them through some remediation problems that they had, and now they're onboarded. And so sometimes we kind of just, our takeaway there was all we really need to do is proactively reach out at times. And this is a learning for Microsoft, of being more engaged and just reaching out, kind of a proactive support for onboarding. And that's what really the Onboarding Center is about. Over the last couple of weeks, if you follow it, you heard our earnings announcement that Satya made. And there were a few key highlights that were especially relevant to me working in the Office 365 group. One of those was a specific call out in the growth of cloud services. And Office 365 was mentioned specifically, along with Azure and Dynamics CRM Online. But one of the points that Satya made was that Office 365 is a vibrant, active service, meaning that our customers not only purchase the service, but they actually use it. And I'll tell you, there's not a lot of value, and this goes for whether you're deploying on-prem software or you're purchasing a subscription to a service. There's not a lot of value in the service unless you use it. And what we've talked about over the last 6 months is there's really not a lot of value in the actual deployment process or the migration process, if you think about it. My wife always says it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Well, when it comes to a cloud service, it is about the destination. The journey is a tax to getting there. And that's how we look at deployment. And it's actually a problem that the Office 365 engineering team takes seriously. It's something that we're engineering out of the equation. Our plan with this onboarding center is to collect data and then automate and make this basically a setup. Make it a silicone-based solution versus a carbon-based solution, which is what the onboarding center that I run today is. So we're going to continue to collect data and measure and automate this out of the equation. But I thought this was very relevant, just how important it is that we continue to look at how the cloud is used, how you all are getting the value out of that. So as we start talking about the onboarding center, I thought it was very important to talk about what it was like beforehand. And again, I sat in front of many of you all customers and worked with many of you all, the partners, in doing these deployments. And I sat in front of the customers, and there were times that I got screamed at because it was taking too long. It was too complex. Our documentation wasn't good enough. Our support wasn't good enough. And Microsoft made it more complex than it needed to be. But at the same time, we were coming from a tradition of selling on-prem software. I had a large government customer tell me, he said, "You all don't get it." And he said, "You used to sell me IT, you used to sell me IT products and IT services. Now you are my IT." And he said, "Your relationship and the way you work with us has to change." And that made it very relevant to me. It really punctuated the fact that we have to change. Many of you went through processes with us like this, and I didn't put this up here so you could read all the words. You can look at the slide later and do that. But we had a pretty convoluted process. And not all of this is bad. And I would say any one thing in here isn't bad. This whole list of things are actually needed at times, even today, doing a deployment. But when you put it all together, and when you ask the question, do you need to have a consultative, custom approach with third-party tools that have a service alignment workshop where you answer 200 to 300 questions before you do anything, before you take step one into onboarding? You absolutely do not. And we can move you to the core enablement, to the service, and we can migrate your data without doing these things. And it doesn't matter if you're a small customer, 150 seats, or 150,000 seats. And this past year has proven that to us. We have the data that we're glad to share with you all, and we'll share some of that. But with partners, we share this data as well. And we've shown that through this process, we can come up with a standard approach. Today we don't have that. What we did do was we took a lot of feedback from you all. And we appreciate that feedback, both the positive and the negative. And I think if you just imagine this bottom being red, because that's what it was intended, but I don't think it shows up well with the red and black. So it is the less positive on the bottom, the more positive on the top. And I won't go through all of these, but you can kind of get the gist of this. Some of the positive experience, there wasn't really a bunch of major problems. As IT professionals, you tend to accept a certain amount of issues as you deploy. It's kind of even fun as an IT person to work through the challenges and have those successes as you work through them and get the deployment done. But one thing we did do is we also provided a good connection with the business group and the engineering teams. We also gave you improvements, so kind of a no pain, no gain. If you were getting gain on the other end of that, you would accept some challenges through the deployment process. But then on the other side of that, if the pain was too great, if data was lost, if the support wasn't there that you were looking for, that created a little bit too much pain, and you let us know that as well. So overall, what we found is that journey to the cloud was rough, and you let us know that through the product SAT and the customer SAT scores that we see. But once you got there, customers are generally pretty happy. And compared to our competitors, we're right on par with that. But again, the getting there part, the journey, was full of potholes, so to speak. So then last year, if you all did any deployments from an Office 365 perspective, you probably heard of a new program that we had called Fast Track. And we were in version 1 of Fast Track, and this was more of a streamlined set of processes that we would take you through. And it was meant to kind of prove to ourselves that a standard process would work. That we didn't have to have a custom approach to deploying Office 365 based on how many seats you had in your organization, or whether you had cloud IDs or ADFS, or whether you were on Exchange 2010 or 2007. Now, there's definitely some variables, as we go through the process, but to get core enablement complete, to get provisioned and on the cloud, a lot of these things didn't matter. And it didn't take 400 hours or 600 hours of a consultative effort to do that. So we came out with Fast Track V1. You all gave us this feedback. Simple, fast, initial deploy is the right path. And our whole intent was to say, can we get you to the cloud and let you have active use before you take on some of the big integration projects that maybe affect only 10% of your organization. So the 90% can still get active use and value out of the cloud, out of Office 365, before you go through all of those steps. And again, this is a different approach than maybe an on-prem IT project, where you look at all the requirements, you do all the remediation work up front, and you take care of everything before you roll out and before you enable your users. And you all gave us that feedback. And a lot of this was around just the theory. And there's obviously some feedback that told us that, we needed to take care of some additional detail. We needed to include hybrid. We needed to include some other things in that. But through all that feedback and the customer sat that you gave us through here, we came out with what the Onboarding Center is today. So let me just give you a brief overview of what my team thinks of when we talk about the Onboarding Center and how we look at what we include, what's in scope, and then what's out of scope. So the Onboarding Center is an operations center, and I'll kind of explain detail of how we're organized in the next slide. But we look at doing things that are repeatable, that can be standardized and automated, and that can be delivered remote. So this is guided assistance. Think of it as a proactive support for onboarding. And we use a series of tools that we deliver through you all, the customers, and through partners, as well as the ability to run remotely if that's warranted. And again, I'll just make this point. We haven't found any complexity or level of customer that can't go through this process. And we have the data to share and prove that. Now, that doesn't mean that it's just the Onboarding Center. A lot of times it's an and. We include partners in doing some of the more complex on-prem work that needs to be done. But that doesn't mean that the Onboarding Center, which is a benefit to you all when you purchase Office 365, it doesn't mean that you can't leverage that. And again, later in the slide deck, we show some of those areas of how we engage. So on 9/1, we launched the Onboarding Center. We have 5 locations. We have a 6th that'll come online in Europe later when we get to capacity. But 2 in the US, 1 in Europe, and 2 in Asia Pacific, 1 in Shanghai, 1 in Tokyo. We started off with around 350 people. This included our migration team as well, located in India and Poland. Is that right, Thomas? I thought I saw Thomas. Now we have about 450 total. So we're fully staffed. We are basically open for business. We don't have any capacity issues. We've taken through about 5,000 customers, a little over that to date, are going through the Onboarding Center. About 2,000 of those have completed. And I think the best thing to do, we released in 8 languages. starting off. One important thing, because this was a benefit, we didn't do a rolling release. We released worldwide for all areas and countries that had access to Office 365. We didn't want to do a rolling and say, no, you have to wait until we figure this out. So we really did a lot of work over the last year to make sure we could roll this out for a worldwide rollout. And we've had a lot of success with that, a lot of good feedback. So with that, let me show you and let you meet the Office 365 Onboarding Center. George, can you hit that button?
At Microsoft, our vision for Office 365 deployment is very straightforward. We want every single customer that purchases Office 365 to have a great onboarding experience.
For Office 365, we wanted our customers to be able to purchase today and consume tomorrow. To do that, we needed to take the pain out of getting there. Engineering picked up the challenge of Office 365 deployment by recognizing the customer experience isn't what we wanted.
Fast Track is our Office 365 deployment motion. One of the really exciting aspects of Fast Track is that every customer has a direct connection to our Office 365 engineering team when they go through the Fast Track Onboarding Center.
The Onboarding Center is a global team supporting 8 different languages across all time zones, and it's made up of engineers and onboarding managers ready to engage directly with customers.
Before joining the OBC, I was a technical account manager, or TAM, for about the last 10 years, both in Europe and here in the States. And I think the experience of working with customers, with account teams, with services and support, all sort of combined into a great background for being an onboarding manager.
Well, I've been with Microsoft 18 years, and I was a senior escalation engineer as well as a technical advisor. And so there's very few environments that I haven't come across.
The Onboarding Center is for companies of all sizes, from small, medium to large enterprise customers.
We've got a really prescriptive process, and so by being able to tell customers what they need to do and when, it really eases a lot of their discomfort around what steps they're going to need to take, and we're able to identify risks and concerns that they might have.
The general feedback is that most customers are surprised to even hear from us, and they're actually excited to know that they're not out there alone and that we're here to help them, that we want to make sure that their experience is perfect.
I think one of the biggest things that I want the field to know is the Onboarding Center is open for business. We already have 2,000 customers that are going through the process, and we are ready to help.
Customers want a one-button approach to migrations, but until we have that, the migration team is here to help.
The Office 365 team, we're here to help.
We're here to help.
We're here to help.
We're here to help. We're here to help.
Wir sind hier zum Helfen.
Because we're here to help.
That we're here to help.
Estamos aquí para ayudarles.
We are here to help.
And we're here to help.
We are here to help.
We are here to help.
All right, so one message out of that is we're here to help. You got that. But I think the other thing, key there is, pick up on the years of experience that this staff comes to the Onboarding Center with. We have a set of vendors that we work closely with that work in the Onboarding Center, but also a lot of blue badge Microsoft employees with years of experience in support, in engineering, and consulting that do this work. So one thing that my boss, Jeff Nickel, always says is, if we don't solve the problem here in the Onboarding Center, who are we going to escalate to? We're the engineering group, so eventually it's going to come back to us, so why not have it start with us and just stay with us? And that's the approach that we take. So there's not a challenge that when we run into when we're working with you all that we won't solve. It might not be directly at the time that we're talking to you on the phone, but we will make sure that that problem is routed and that we make sure that you get the answers you need to continue onboarding. The other thing that was significant in that video, the one onboarding manager said, customers are generally surprised to hear from us. This is the change. We've not done an approach before where we've reached out proactively. And we've seen the amount of incidents through onboarding decrease significantly. This is something that we track on a month-by-month basis, and it has been double-digit declines in that first 90 days from when a customer purchases to the time that they get onboarded. We've seen those incidents go down because of this approach. So we know that we're on the right track with this, and we just need to continue to collect the data where we can make the automation and the product changes to make this better. So again, I think I've covered some of this. What is onboarding? This is what the Onboarding Center is. It's direct remote assistance We'll work a combination of tools, guidance, assistance. We'll engage where we have to, but most of this is done remote, and it's done with a partner or directly with the customer. I did note something here at the bottom. This is available for all customers with 150 seats. And I would just say EGA, those are the SKUs, paid SKUs that we support. And again, it was from 9/1 forward. We do have in our Fast Track onboarding portal, if you purchase before 9/1, you can submit a request to also get onboarded. So we'll contact customers proactively from 9/1 forward. For those that purchased prior to that, we're looking for the account team or the partner or you all, the customer yourselves, to submit a request for onboarding, because we don't see that in our system unless someone reaches out and lets us know. So if that's you, reach out and let us know. You can also go to the booth, the Office 365 booth, and talk to us there, and we can guide you through that process. So just the process at a high level before, and I'll run through a couple scenarios before George kind of goes through some demos for you. But where we start is the getting started phase. And this is on our Fast Track, our deployed@office.com portal. We look for, if you have a partner involved or an account team involved, to help with filling out a deployment plan. This is a key piece, and we'll go a little bit more detail about this plan a little bit later. But it's a key, critical piece of information that feeds the onboarding center. But this is where you can do a pilot or a trial, or you can go forward directly into onboarding. So that account team, partner, or yourselves as customers can go through this process as well in getting started. Next, we come into the onboarding center. When we see that deployment plan and we see that you show up in our Fast Track portal that George is going to demo, we know to reach out. And we start with an assessment. And this is a detailed assessment using the tools that George is going to review with you. And we'll collect information on your system, on your environment, and then we'll help you develop a remediation plan. So the reporting out of all these tools that you or the partner in your company run will give a detailed report of what's right and what needs to be fixed, and we'll, again, guide and assist you in resolving any of the issues before you onboard. So that's assess, remediate. We'll then go to enable, where we provision the users and the accounts. And then once that's complete, we'll test the first logons, make sure people can log on, use the services that are enabled. And then we'll move, if you choose, into migration. There's two areas. I know we have a migration session later, right, Thomas, on Wednesday, where we'll go into a lot of detail on email migration. But you can choose to have us do that migration, or you can work with a partner through an adoption offer to get funding to do that. One thing I will say, as we get into driving usage, we call that adoption. We do have an adoption offer to help partners and customers to fully adopt the Office 365 product. One thing that I'll say is this diagram doesn't do justice to where adoption should start. It should absolutely start here at the getting started in the planning, and we're going to ask you about that when you get to the assess phase. If you've purchased the Enterprise Suite, and you only say you want to onboard Exchange, we're going to ask you if we can help you onboard the other workloads. And you may not have a plan to do that, but we want to make sure that you understand the value of those services, and as you go through the onboarding center, the ease at which we can help you enable those workloads. And I think one of the biggest examples I can share is with Yammer. A lot of customers don't have plans to use Yammer. We had a customer come to us and ask us to onboard Exchange, and we offered to also onboard Yammer since they had purchased the licenses for that. And we asked them if they wanted to use that in the process of onboarding to capture really the end-to-end onboarding for their organization. Capture all the conversations, all the documentation. So we use Yammer to literally do the onboarding process. At the start, we had one person, and I'm looking at Jim because I know he did this. We had one person start. At the end, it was over 30 people engaged in this Yammer group, helping this large corporation with the onboarding process. And our intent was to show the customer how they could use the service to actually adopt the product and how they could learn through that process in a guided and assisted way with the Office 365 team. So I say all that to just remind you and encourage you to start adoption at the very beginning of your onboarding process. Don't wait till the end, because once you get enabled, you're going to have users that are ready to use. And if you start the training, the adoption, working with a partner for adoption or directly with the Onboarding Center, we can guide you to the materials. Start it up there, not here at the end the way that we show it. And again, one slide, and then I'm going to turn this over to George. But we have really 3 scenarios the way that we engage. And the reason I point this out is because a lot of feedback that we've gotten is, especially for complex customers, again, not based on size, but just complexities in the environment, has been, well, not every customer can go through the Onboarding Center. And the interpretation of that is not every customer can go through without any other assistance. But a lot of people, again, have the feeling that we don't handle certain complexities, certain size customers we can't deal with, and that's not the case at all. So highlighting the way that we work, there's the OBC-led engagement, and then partner assist. And this is where the customer wants Microsoft to lead, but they have a partner that's engaged in their environment that they want to learn, they want to train that partner, and they want us to assist. And we'll gladly do that. The other is a lot of partners bring the actual deals to Microsoft, so they sell the deal, and they're the deployment partner for this customer. In this case, we're still going to see that customer come into our portal. We're going to reach out to the partner first, and we're going to engage them, and we're really going to ask to collect data in this case. We can assist the partner in whatever way that they want to be assisted. Again, minimally, we want to collect the information and data, and you'll see when I show you some of the data that we collect why that's so important. But we're not there to get in the way. We're not there to disintermediate the partner from the customer. The intent is to just follow the process and validate the entry and exit points through the phases to make sure that all the things are being done according to the way that the engineering team would like to see them done. And then the third scenario is one that we see less than half the time, where customers just say, hey, we don't have a partner, we don't want a partner, we just want you to help us get it onboarded, and we're going to move on our merry way. And so we'll help customers do that as well. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to George to do a quick intro and then go through some of our onboarding tools.
Well, thank you, Scott. So my name is George Moeselem. I'm based out of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Been with Microsoft for 8 years. And yeah, I've been doing for the last six years almost. Nothing but cloud. So what started with BPOS, both dedicated and multi-tenant, which evolved later into multi-tenant, and right now in the Fast Track Onboarding Center. So I probably have met or have been working with you, or some of you, in the past. And I'm in Scott's organization working with my colleagues, and I'm a so-called onboarding engineer. So I just want to quickly go through some of the tools that we have and we use so you all know what's going on in this little black box that we call the Onboarding Center.
Can we go ahead and switch?
Yes, please. So all of our onboarding engineers and onboarding managers, they live by this tool. This is called the Fast Track Orchestration Portal. Now, that's not a name that I will ask you to remember, but this is basically where all customers come in. So when licenses are purchased, we have a direct feed from the commerce systems in the back end that feeds customer data into this tool. Now, as you can see, I have a list of highly confidential customers in here. So I'm just going to click on Contoso Limited and just give you an overview what this looks like. So on the right, you'll see how many seats they are purchased. In this case, they've purchased 0 seats. and who is assigned to that customer from an internal perspective. Now, if I expand this, that will give you an overview of the status, sorry. Basically, where we are in the process. So we could be, for example, in a status where we have already enabled everything and we're now migrating mailboxes. Or we could be at the very beginning of the project where we're going to basically set ourselves up with a partner to kick off the engagement. Now, if I go to service status, for example, this is basically an overview of what services are in scope for us to deploy. So remember, Office 365 is a suite of services, and not all customers need to deploy all of the services. Now, if I, for example, click on Office Pro Plus, per service we can indicate what the status is and where customers are in the process of deploying that specific service. Now, there are some customer readiness notes. So that means customers, buy licenses or they purchase Office 365, but they may not be ready. And what that means is you might have to do some remediation work, as we call it, just to be on par with the requirements of going into Office 365. Now, Office 365 is a service that runs on the latest and greatest versions. So that also means that from our perspective, we require that you are on some base version that, works well with Office 365 to give you the best possible experience there. Now, if there's any feedback, so if there's satisfaction issues, that's something that we record in this tab. Now, why do we do that? Now, as Scott alluded to earlier, we like to collect data. Why do we do that? That enables us to make some really key business decisions. Now, it could be technical of nature, but it could also be satisfaction. But, I'm not happy with the way this is going. The process is not good enough for us. So we look at that data. Okay? So when we started out on 9.1, and we'll come back to that later, we targeted all of our customers that with 150 seats and above. Now, we quickly found out, we knew that beforehand, but there's been a lot of feedback basically about customers having multiple Active Directory forests, right? So to basically weigh how many customers have or are in that situation, we collected those numbers and made a business decision on that. And right now, or basically a couple of months back, we took a decision to also support customers with multi-forest Active Directory environments. Now, just to show you some of the tasks, right? So this is a pre-baked process. Every customer that goes into our process or goes through the deployment process will go through these steps. Does that mean every project is the same? No, but we will still go through the process. So if, for example, we only deploy Exchange Online and not Yammer and not SharePoint, we'll go through this, and this tool is smart enough that when we select Exchange only, it will only show the task for Exchange. But still in the same way as we do for all other customers. I just wanted to show you that also for our partners, before we reach out to our customers, we want to make sure that we identify the right people up front and align with both our internal account team, but also our partners. Because it's very important, we go in as one team and make sure that we have the right information. Okay? So the first conversation we have is, who's our partner? If there is any partner that we can identify through either the partner of record or through the deployment plan, then that's something we act on immediately. As I said, services. So this is basically where we fill out what the intent is. Not all customers need to deploy all services. So this is where we just basically go ahead and edit this. Say how many seats, if there's migration involved or not, to basically set the scope of the project. Contacts, well, very important obviously in a project, but I just want to let you know that the way you make sure, sorry, I need to repeat that. So the way we identify our partners is through a deployment plan. So if you are not familiar with the Fast Track portal yet, I would invite you to go and have a look, because that really provides you basically a tool, and I'll come to that later, a tool to assess your customer's environment, but also list yourselves as the primary contact for deployment. So let me just directly switch to that. So this is a customer that we have already deployed, and this will also be using this customer as a reference case later on during the slides. It's DTEC, based in Ukraine. And if I go to planning tools, hopefully demigods are with me today. Let's see. There we go. And we go to the deployment planning tool section. You may have seen this before. What it will actually show you is an assessment. So each of these sections you see there, so starting with the plan overview, current environment, identity, and so on, if you click on modify, you'll be presented with a list of questions. Now again, that is very important to us. We analyze that data, and this is basically also an attempt to automate the whole assessment process. In the past, especially in Fast Track version 1, we had so-called workshop assessment decks, and we used a lot of PowerPoint decks and bothered both customers and partners with those decks to identify what state they're in. Now, this is basically an attempt, again, to automate that in a streamlined process and a repeatable process. Now, I'll not go through each of these questions, but just to give you an idea what that does. Once that's completed, you can see that I can create a snapshot of the process. If I click on that, it will ask me, okay, what the title is, the date is, and if you want to give it a little description, you can do that there as well. And it then automatically generate a deployment plan based on the answers that you have given in the assessment up there. So that's very important to understand. So this thing is very dynamic. So you put an answer in there. For example, if you don't select Exchange Online in there, you will see nothing in the deployment plan about Exchange Online. It's not only about the deployment scope itself, but also to identify any remediation work that needs to happen up front. So we'll ask stuff, and this is very detailed, but are your user principal names publicly routable? If not, we'll put an action item in there to make sure that we address that during the project, so it doesn't hit us by surprise later on. So now we'll switch back to the other. Yeah. All right. Cool. So I've shown FTOP. This was an earlier version, but basically, again, we don't need to repeat this, but it's about status of a customer that's going through that process. HRC, very important. HRC is also another tool to automatically collect data out of customers' environments. So what it does, it's an asset collection. Asset collection means that out of Active Directory, we'll read a lot of information such as, okay, what messaging system are you using? What version are you on? What client versions are you on in terms of what Office, Windows, and browser versions you have deployed? That is also all information that we can get through that tool with no special permission. So you can run that on any client. When completed, that will automatically also upload that information into our backend tool, which is called Viewpoint, which I'll touch on later as well. So that gives us insight into basically your state. And look into the future, we'll try to automate more and more and more through this tool. This is Viewpoint. As I mentioned on the earlier slide, Viewpoint gives us information about your state, but also your tenant, what subscriptions you have, what domains you have registered in the tenant. See if there's any, planned maintenance, or if there were incidents that have affected your tenant. If there's any partner attached as well, yeah. ID Fix. This is a tool you can download on the web. So we're making use of our own tools, basically. We don't have any special tools in Microsoft. So ID Fix is a tool that you run in Active Directory to basically identify all the issues that you might face when setting up directory synchronization. So especially for larger customers, directory synchronization is a requirement, so you don't have to do identity management on both sides, on-premises and in the cloud. Now what it does is scans Active Directory and outputs it in this format, and you can change the output format as well to XML or other formats, CSV for example. But it lists the issues that you have in your Active Directory, and common issues would be, duplicate email addresses, non-routable UPN namespaces, leading or trailing white spaces, missing attributes or attributes that miss values that are required for directory synchronization, and others. And just talking about the onboarding cell, what is in its scope. So Office 365, again, is a suite of services, and we touch on all of those services. So we help you deploy each and every one of them. So that's Exchange Online, Yammer, Lync, SharePoint, OneDrive for Business, and even with the client. We'll provide remote assistance, and we'll help you through that process. Go through each and one of those services. Now, just to call out a few specific examples on Exchange, in this case, we'll help you set up the domain names. So register the domain names in the tenant, so setting that up for use as SMTP domains. We'll set up mail routing between both on-premises and Exchange Online, so that users that are on-premises can still be in touch with users in the cloud. Pretty useful, right? If need be, we'll go as far as setting up hybrid. So that gives you that extra, this rich feature set that provides high fidelity between Office 365 and Exchange on-premises. Now, for Office Pro Plus, as another example, we would set up or help you set up the right deployment method. So we can go anywhere between users having to set up Office Pro Plus themselves and download every bit from the cloud to setting up a single distribution file share into your organization and use the Office deployment customization tool to basically customize Office deployment the way you want. So that would mean choosing the right languages, the right architecture type, 32 versus 64-bit, and what the update mechanism would be. Do you want to, for example, update or download the updates straight from the cloud, or do you also want to download those from an internal file share as well? So these are all choices we together with partners can make. Now, if you want to know more about the specifics of the scope of what we do, I recommend you go to deploy.office.com and read the service description over there. We also have a friend, Thomas, here, who is in charge of the mail migration team. So we also migrate mailboxes from Exchange on-premises. We do that from IMAP sources, from Lotus Notes, from Google. And for Exchange, for example, we migrate all the data. So we don't have a limit on the maximum size of the mailbox. For Lotus Notes, it's different. We migrate 90 days. And that's also something that leads into some of the enhancements we've made year to date. So we started out on 1st of September 2014 with 30 days of Notes mail. Now, based on customer feedback and all the data we've collected, we've made a decision to go for 90 days of email. Also, We started out with single Active Directory Forest customers. Now we want all customers, no matter what or how many Active Directory forests they have. We've added group-wise to the equation as well. So if you have a group-wise mail environment, we can help you migrate those mailboxes from there as well. And same goes from Google. We used to treat Google as an IMAP source, so that would mean we'll only download the email from the Google service. Now we do mail, calendar, and contacts as well. All right, so again, if you want more information, well, we'll be here after the session to help answer some of the questions. But more importantly, go through deploy.office.com and read the service descriptions there. Thank you.
You got one more.
One more?
Customer, partner.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I ended early. That's the if this clicker works. There we go. So yes, it's me again. We told you a lot about what we offer to help you. Now this is a slide basically what we expect also from you as customers and partners. Because yes, we're in this together, and there's just so much we can do over the phone or over a video conferencing call. So some of the activities that we would expect you to do would be, configuration changes to your networking, firewall setup. If you have a TMG server, we'll ask you to do that as well. Change management within your own organization. You can take pictures, but also afterwards you'll have access to these slides. We'll set up directory synchronization in a standardized way, meaning there's just a few parameters that we can tweak. If you want to do more customizations to that tool, then that's something that you would be responsible for yourself. Because customizations is not something we can standardize, meaning that we cannot make it a standard and repeatable process for all of our customers. If you have other applications, so line of business applications that you need to coexist with, one typical example would be, how do I leverage Azure Active Directory as an authentication or identity provider to my other cloud services or on-premises services? So yeah, this is the Onboarding Center today is purely focused on Office 365 deployments. All right? Now with that, I'll turn it over to Scott again.
All right, get the clicker working. I just want to share a few customer and partner insights from 9/1 to today. And really, if you look at these 5 key areas, this is how we continually measure going forward. We look at overall deployment, documentation and resources, technical difficulties, support, and then partner. And we didn't have a lot of partner data to share at this point, but I know Riaz is here from our partner PMG team and probably have some sessions later on today and we can share some more of that data. But we're seeing some good things. We're seeing a lot of improvement in our process. You see the feedback in these areas, higher SAT ratings, and the tone is very positive. So the verbatims that we're getting, a lot of words using like delight and appreciative of the assistance, the hand-holding, the guidance, the direct assistance that we're providing. From a documentation perspective, the OBC, I told you before, this is kind of a carbon-based solution versus a silicone-based solution. But the OBC is really shielding or becoming a wedge between what we still haven't caught up with from a Microsoft perspective to make this easier, and kind of shielding customers and partners from the disorganization of our documentation. Perceived pain from tech issues mitigated by the OBC. Mail migration generally viewed as seamless from a process perspective and an execution perspective. OBC effectively serving as the knowledgeable and or responsive single point of contact. So this was one of our primary goals when we set out to put the Onboarding Center in place, is that we would be the POC. When you come into the Onboarding Center, you get a single onboarding manager and a single onboarding engineer to work with you through the entire process. We don't hand you off to different people all the way through based on what phase you're in or what day that you call in. You're assigned to that team through the entire onboarding and migration process. We also have some feedback that is also telling us how we need to change. We know that there's still areas that we need to fix in the documentation side, and there's still technical challenges. As we get into our data here in a little bit, I'll also show you how we take that data and make the improvements. George mentioned DTEC, one of the customers. When you talk about complexity, and we hear people that tell us, well, you know, we're unique, we're complex. DTEC is a unique and complex customer. Largest privately owned energy company in Ukraine, 127,000 employees, 20 silos, each organization or department with its own IT. And if you've been part of a large company, like a large defense systems contractor like I was, you understand this type of environment. Obviously, DTEC had some geopolitical factors. Everyone's probably aware of the military conflict they had going on and just the situation that they were in. They made a decision to onboard to Office 365 as a way to secure their information and to provide just an operational cadence that they wouldn't otherwise. We actually onboarded and migrated them in less than 21 days. And George, I know that you were part of this and actually led this effort, so any additional comments here?
Yeah, I think the thing we learned there is what we can move very fast. So, as Scott mentioned, 21 days, which included onboarding and migration. We actually onboarded this customer in 4 days. We had the kickoff call on a Monday. We started to work on a Tuesday, ended all the activities on a Friday. So this just, shows that we can move very fast, no matter if you have a very complex environment. Because this customer, frankly, they had a very complex environment, especially from a networking perspective.
And you can see the quote from the CIO himself. And what we'll tell you when we start working with you, we will move as fast as you want to move. So there's no delay on our side. We'll run through our process, and we can move you very quickly. And if I could hold questions to the end, we got a couple more slides, and then we have mics. We're taping this for those that didn't hear the kickoff. And since we're recording it, we want to make sure we capture those on mic. We've also had partner feedback, and I'll tell you, there's both positive and critical feedback, and we've made changes where we could from a partner perspective. But in general, when we've started working with a partner and explained how we work, we've gotten great feedback and had some great successes. And again, you can read through these comments. I won't spend a lot of time on these. What I want to get to, if I didn't double-click that too fast, is some of the onboarding insights that we have. And again, data is king when it comes to the onboarding center. So I thought I would share just a few of our trend slides. And this is all aggregate data. But I think it's very important to share with you because these are part of the lessons that we learn. This is the value of the data that we collect. As we started off in September, I'll explain these charts. I know they're eye charts right now, but again, you'll be able to see it a little bit clearer. But up at the top left, we started tracking in September. And I call this velocity by monthly cohort. A cohort is the group of customers that came in that month, and then we track them through the process for each month corresponding and how many days it took. The light green is average days to complete from the beginning of entering in our system to completion. The dark green is when you get to the technical onboarding to completion. And there's a phase in there that I'll talk about a little bit that adds between the dark green and the light green. So we started out at 72 to 62 days, depending on what phase. We go through the last 6 months, 7 months, and we're now down to around 17 days. You just heard George talk about a customer that went through in 4 days. And we have customers that do take longer for a variety of reasons. Some customer-induced, some just technology-induced. But the thing that I want you to take away from here is the curve and the trend. We'll continue to do things from a process perspective, a competency perspective, and an automation perspective that drive this time down. That is the goal of this being in the Office 365 engineering team, so that we can collect and centralize the data from all these projects, and we can see where the long task runners are. We also track by phase. Initiate is that phase between the light green and the dark green. And we have challenges in this phase, and I'll save that to the last slide as an ask and a takeaway. But we also are moving customers into not ready when they come into onboarding and there's technical challenges or there's customer environmental challenges, like maybe you have a large SAP project going on and you just don't want to deal with another project. These customers that we put in not ready are fully eligible to onboard at a later time. However, we're not going to actively and continue to bug you if you tell us you're not ready. So we put some of our customers in that status and then we just keep check on them. The bottom two areas are really the value of the data that I wanted to explain. So we constantly look at our top 10 tasks. We look at them by time. These are tracked by minutes, and you can see create deployment enablement plan. When we first started this, that work took us, and it says here 95 minutes. That's an average. Some took a couple hundred minutes, some took less than that. But we continued to look at then the tasks that are associated with that. We knew that that was adding time. When you look at those number of minutes times 5,000 customers, this is a couple to 3 FTEs worth if we continue to do that over the course of a year. So by looking at the long runners and really examining how we can shorten that through automation or through process, we could save ourselves and you all a lot of time to get onboarded. And that's what we did. So we created a deployment plan wizard, and that's what George showed you earlier. And between not using that wizard and using that wizard, you can see the delta. Probably about 100 minutes on average we save. And again, that's one task out of anywhere from 400 to 600 tasks that it takes to onboard all the services. And so if you can save that amount of time as we continue to automate, you can see significant savings. When you roll that back to the top left, considerable time savings, time to value from 70 days down to 17 days. And again, we'll continue to work on this. We share this data with our partners and you, the customer, if you want to see this. And so, again, this is an opportunity just to share some of that with you at this time. Just to highlight some of our key learnings here. From a business perspective, we get that transformation is challenging. And there's a lot happening in a customer environment. And it's more than just technical. There's a lot of cultural change from moving to the cloud. There's a lot of process change. And it truly is a transformation. We have a lot of information. We have partners that help with this adoption and the training that goes with this. But it shouldn't be something that you take lightly and go in without any planning. We also understand, by standardizing and automating these tasks, we are going from months and years, believe it or not, for some of our large customers, to days and weeks to onboard. Migration of email is a business decision. The technical process is not hard, but our customers have to understand when you decide to migrate all mail without an understanding of what you're actually migrating and how you're going to use that, you can add months and months to your project. And a lot of times, you won't see active use or adoption of the service until you get migrated. A user won't use that mail until they see their other data in there, if you set that expectation. So think carefully about whether you need to migrate everything before you start getting into active use. We've had some feedback that the OBC, we're good at reaching out to you, but how do we get to you? If you'll come by the booth later today, we can share more detail there, but we plan on making this easier. This is a change that we're implementing over the next few weeks so that you'll have a way to contact us, especially if you're just purchasing and you want to get going right away. You don't have to wait for us to contact you. And again, I mentioned this bottom bullet earlier. Adoption starts at the beginning of the project, not at the very end once you get enabled. Then on the technical side, talked a few of these. Data is what's telling us what to do. We've collected over 3 million data points since September. That just continues to grow day by day. This tells us where we need to change, where we need to improve, and what we need to automate. Let's see, I'm just going to, one important learning, I think these last two, seat size does not indicate the complexity. So if you're a large customer, large number of seats, don't immediately exclude the onboarding center as a way to do it just because we're remote. I think you now understand our level of expertise that we have in the onboarding center and the complexity that we can deal with. It doesn't mean that you don't need a partner or your IT staff to assist with that, but this is a benefit. This is a benefit to you all at no cost through the purchase of the product, and you should leverage that. And then customers that get to 10% of the seats adoption, you hit a tipping point. And our data shows that once you get to this point, and if you can drive to this point, the rest of the organization tips and continues to start actively using. So this is a goal that you should have in mind, doing the things that you have to do to get to that point, whether it's leveraging a partner that specifically works with adoption of driving new technologies, or you do this yourself. It doesn't matter. You want to get to this point. And then finally, the key takeaways before we get to Q&A. The OBC is for all customers. And I think we've covered that point pretty clearly, but we don't exclude any customer that's eligible for this benefit. We'll work with you regardless of the environment. And again, you may need help, but we should always be in the equation. Getting started deployment plan is key input to the onboarding center. I write this or say this because there's a lot of times that we start and we don't have that plan. If the plan is not available through your partner or through an account team or that you haven't filled out, we'll assist you with doing that at the point that we engage. So please help us with that. Also, our data shows that partner involvement or customers that have a partner involved, they're generally more satisfied with their deployment. Again, this is 50, I think it's just over 50% use partners for deployment. We'll help you connect up with a partner. We have a quick leads program. If you don't have an IT staff that does this work for you, we're glad to help you find a certified or a qualified partner that does this. And then finally, I told you I would talk about the initiate phase. One of the longest running tasks or longest runners we have in the onboarding center is this phase where we're doing the kickoff and collecting information and having conversations about the environment. It adds days and weeks when we don't get a response. So as a customer, or if you have a partner that's working on your behalf, or if an account team, Microsoft account team is involved, and we're having to resend and recontact, and we're not getting a response, we see that specific part adding more time than any other phase that we have in the onboarding center. So if you have purchased Office 365 and you want to get it deployed, make sure if you're the people or the partner or account team is not being responsive, if you would help us drive that, we can move a lot faster. So with that, I'll leave you with our link, deploy.office.com/onboarding for more information. And then if there are questions, I ask that you just use the mics and step on up. I think we have, how many minutes?
10 more minutes.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
Good morning. I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Yes.
The first one is, what is kind of the timeline relative to starting something out in a pilot phase, using a pilot tenant, and engaging with a partner that's not necessarily associated with the onboarding center? How do those variables work into the mix as well? And where I'm getting at, perhaps you mentioned this earlier, I was a late arrival, but we started out with a pilot tenant, and we're currently involved with a migration partner focusing on the SharePoint aspect of Office 365, but we're looking to do the full thing. And I'm wondering, when is a logical point to engage with the onboarding center?
Right now. So if we haven't contacted you already and you're looking, to tell us you're ready to move forward with the other workloads, you can go to the deploy.office.com portal. There's a form you fill out. Put your information in there, your contact information, and there's a short description. And just say, hey, looking for help. We've purchased this. We'll look up your tenant. So if you put that information in there too, it makes it quicker. And we'll then reach out to you and we can get started. We'll set up a kickoff and get going.
And so is there a relationship between the point where you actually procure or purchase the licenses? Because right now we're in a pilot mode and we haven't gotten to that point yet where we
have trial licenses.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
Trial. So we'll help in a trial phase as well, but we won't actually reach out to you until you purchase. But if you reach out to us and tell us what you need, then we can start.
Perfect. That helps. And
to be more specific, go to that link that's on there.
Yep.
/onboarding. There'll be a link called request onboarding.
Okay.
Fill out your details and we'll reach out to you.
Okay, sounds good. Yep. Second question is, where is the onboarding center team? Are they dispersed throughout the United States? And the other question associated with that, are they at a standardized level of training and expertise with the application? Some things that we found, you get varying degrees of expertise within the Microsoft organization, right?
Yeah, so when people are involved, you'll always see that, but the process we have is very structured and prescriptive. So I'm not sure if you were here when he did the demo of the tools. It is task by task. So we've tried to take out the consultative and the variableness of people's expertise by following a very prescriptive process. Location-wise, it doesn't show it here. We're in Las Colinas and Charlotte for the U.S., and that's how we support our customers in the Americas, North and South America.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Any other questions? Alistair, you have a question. All right. Yes.
I just wanted to know where your booth is.
It's the big orange Office 365. I think you can't miss it, right? When you walk in, if you walk in the front doors and you look just like directly back, you'll see it.
So you're mixed in with all of the Office 365. You don't
have
a separate corner.
Yeah. There's a deploy banner at the top. Just come on by.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.